we think that the dominant narrative that forgiveness is a virtue is look like shaming people who don't give a forgiveness as a sinner, for example, as an evil, because this kind of narrative is creating a standard that of the good people itself, ladies and gentlemen. Because in our society, for example, in our place, for example, this is the dominant narrative is dominate the value. For example, it is also exists in your religion, social, and your culture, ladies and gentlemen. So we think that this is very very bad to begin with, ladies and gentlemen, because this kind of narrative is kind of like take away the concept of opening the self-express itself, that in terms of like your emotional, in terms of your feeling, ladies and gentlemen. And we think that this kind of narrative is very very strong, ladies and gentlemen, because in our side school is very progressive, such as this kind of narrative are campaign to the movie, for example, song and journal and so on and so forth, that always have a happy ending if you forgive people itself, ladies and gentlemen. And that is why we think that this is like a victimize the vulnerable people itself, or even the individual who giving forgiveness itself, ladies and gentlemen. So that is why we want, our stance is kind of like we want to everyone have to do what they want, and if they want to forgive, then they can forgive, and if they don't want, it's okay, ladies and gentlemen. Two layers in my speech, like why it is harming and secondary, why we think that it will be affect to the mental of individual itself, ladies and gentlemen. Number one, we think that when you are fight each other, for example, because you don't want to take it this for too long, for example, then you giving forgiveness, for example, in terms of like your friendship, for example, you hold your feeling because you want to give forgiveness, ladies and gentlemen. That is like kind of like it's hurt your feeling, it's hurt your emotional at the end, ladies and gentlemen. Like for example, we can see the case of like you have a best friend, for example, and then like your best friend do mistake to you, for example, then you give him forgiveness because you do want to break your friendship, for example, you are very afraid to lose your friends, ladies and gentlemen. So you give them a forgiveness, then this is forgiveness, it will be lead to do again and again, then it's going to be like a hurt your feeling again and again, ladies and gentlemen. And then let's see like what happened if this kind of things is happen to the very vulnerable people, which is they don't have a power to begin with, which is they already discriminate to begin with, ladies and gentlemen. We think that is going to attack them very very much, right? Because when someone spread hate, for example, to them, like bullying them, for example, then they have no choice other than give forgiveness, because to begin with they already do not have any capacity to fight back. So that is why at least there is a good image coming by the society, that the society will judge this kind of minority, for example, as a good people. So that is why he still have a place inside the society to be accepted, right? But what happened the moment when you like force yourself to do this kind of thing? We think that number one, you will feel uncomfortable, for example, because your environment, for example, and your environment, you will be uncomfortable inside of that, because you already feeling bad, for example, because like for example in terms of friendship, for example, in terms of company, you already have no bonding emotional, because you try to hold what there's some kind of a fire inside of yourself, for example, and you end up like cannot enjoy your work, for example, your school, for example, because your friends is you are not feeling good to your friends, for example, or you to your groups anymore, ladies and gentlemen. Also secondly, we think that it can attack your mental healthy at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, because we think that this kind of forcement, for example, or you try to hold your emotional, or you try to hold what you want to express, this going to lead you to be suffer and depressed at the end, ladies and gentlemen, because you are being oppressed all the time, because you are being victimized by those kind of narrative, for example, but you still hold your emotional until the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. And also secondly, like if the moment when we cannot express ourselves, we think that this narrative is like close our mouth to tell the truth, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot fight back, for example, because we want to see as an angel, for example, and we think that why it is okay to not forgive, ladies and gentlemen, because sometimes there is a case that we cannot forgive, ladies and gentlemen. Even a little things, for example, is really hard to give and forgive. At least like we can tell ourselves what we want and why we, and at least we can tell them that I cannot forgive you because you already hurt my feeling, for example. And also like the case sometimes like you already murdered, for example, or you do sexual harassment to me, but you say that please forgive me, then I have to give you forgiveness, ladies and gentlemen, because I want to see as a good person, for example. Then it will be like very victimized by this kind of action, because in my side like I'm not, because in my side like I'm not going to be is going to be a big burden for me, for example, because I can, and because I cannot, because I will think this kind of issue, for example, then I can fight back to you, then I can do revenge to you, because I already create my image that I give forgiveness. That is why I'm will acting as an angel, ladies and gentlemen. And also like why it's okay to not to forget, because at least like we are okay, ladies and gentlemen. We can relax and we have no burden at the end of the day. And also like we think that this is like take away the right of individual itself, ladies and gentlemen. What right that we mean in this debate is like your right to be happy, for example, or your right to be not oppressed by this kind of narrative, ladies and gentlemen, because we want to give you a freedom, we want to give you a comfort, provide you comfortable life for you, we want to make sure that you are not being oppressed by anyone, that we want to make sure that you can express yourself, ladies and gentlemen. So we think that we're very proud to.